You might remember months ago when they had the whole debacle about Halloween Returns and how it wasn't going to get made. The script got leaked online, and I said on one of my review videos that I was going to do a video talking about that script because I had the chance to read it and what I thought about it. So finally, after months and months, I'm just now getting around to actually making that video. But I figured perhaps with the news of Danny McBride and his buddy making the new Halloween movie, that maybe it's relevant again in some ways, because I'm kind of worried they're kind of going to make some of the same mistakes that this script makes. Because, I made the video before when I found out that I was going to make it. I wasn't aware at the time that that video was actually going to be, or that movie was actually going to be like, not a remake, but it's going to continue after the first two films. Well, this one kind of does something similar, so I kind of wanted to bring that up and talk about some points with that, about why, I didn't think it was going to work, although I did enjoy some parts of it, which we'll get into. Halloween Returns, it was a 109-page script written by Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan. These are the same guys that had wrote Feast, The Collector, some of the Saw films. I believe they even directed a couple of those movies. And there was talks that the actual director might end up being Mike Flanagan, who did, Oculus and or Ouija, Origins of Evil, and stuff like that. Which I liked him. I liked Hush. I liked Oculus, besides the ending. I liked Ouija, Origins of Evil, pretty well. So I was excited about it when they said they was going to make it. But if you recall, around Halloween that year, the script was supposed to be done, and the guys that was in charge of it, said they was going to read it. Well, right after they were supposed to read it on Halloween Day, then there was talks of, there's going to have to be work done. So that kind of told me right there that maybe they didn't like the script that much. People were handing out the script on online chat rooms and stuff, and I've got it, and I have confirmed this was the real script. And like I said, it was 109 pages. And the plot picked up after the first Halloween, which is okay if you're going to go for a retro thing. I thought that was pretty cool. So basically, when he falls off the balcony, Loomis runs out there and he's gone. And we just pick up from there and we just take off running. The one thing about it, though, is not only do we just take off running, but that's pretty much it for Loomis. Laurie Strode, that whole thing is kind of whitewashed away, and we just move forward with new characters coming into play and new things. And we have a new doctor called Rogers that comes into play. Turns out that while Michael was, in the insane asylum, he had more than one doctor that he was pretty close with, and Rogers is the guy next to Loomis that apparently knows, as much about Michael or more than Loomis does. Now, I can understand why they was going to do this, because obviously Donald Pleasence is dead, and unless you want to have a CGI Loomis, I can see why they want to move away and get a new doctor. But we'll come back to the Loomis thing in a minute. The Laurie Strode thing, well, kind of hate to see her not be mentioned anymore in the script, because they don't really bring her up anymore. I understand she's not young anymore, so they couldn't really continue on with her, and they kind of did the whole thing picking up with her later on in H2O, but it just seemed like an awfully important character not to really have much to say or do with her in the script. So everything after part one is reneged. Okay, there's no Thorn group. Laurie Strode is not, his sister. That's gone. There's no Jamie Lloyd. Buster Rhymes didn't beat up Michael Myers, which is probably the only really good thing that would come out of this, because we can forget that whole thing ever happened. Basically, the plot of the movie was, later on that night, Myers is going on his killing rampage some more. Things happen. This new doctor shows up, and they end up apprehending Michael. Michael just kind of shuts down, and they take him to prison where he's on death row for years and years. So we shoot forward years later. He's on death row. Roger's trying to make sure that the job gets done right. He's got a daughter named Sophia, who's now a teenager. She comes into play, and somehow Myers sees her during the execution stuff, and it just sets him back off. So he goes on a rampage. So, in a sense, with Laurie gone, now it's Sophia kind of taking that role, although without that history, they're trying to just build history, by making fake history in a way with the way the movie starts, and you just can't really attach to her. And as a character, she's okay, but she's no Laurie Strode. But then again, the Laurie Strode in Halloween, the Rob Zombie version, wasn't necessarily Laurie Strode either. I did like the way that it did a bunch of callbacks to the previous films. There's one part of the film where Michael Myers he's escaping, and when that happens, it goes red, and it says in the script it goes red, so it kind of is a callback to Halloween 2 in the hospital. Silver Shamrock Mask make an appearance again. The song makes an appearance again. It's playing on the radio and stuff at different times in the movie. The characters are okay. You know, you're never going to get great characters in a slasher, or at least not like the bit piece characters. The style was alright. We kind of did a lot more callbacks to classic Myers stuff, and the kills were okay. And I liked the setting because at one point the movie did spill over into a pumpkin patch. But there is a lot of problems with the script. For one, they kind of do the same thing. Now, this is my biggest issue with it, and this is probably why I don't think it would have worked. If the movie ever got made, I don't think it would have worked, because they make the same error that Texas Chainsaw 3D made, and that's because the movie's picking up, you know, in the later part of the 70s, early 80s, whatever it was, when the original Halloween took off. Years later, and this girl's a teenager, and that shouldn't be now. But for some reason, everybody's got smartphones and stuff, so that ruins it again. It's just like they did in Texas Chainsaw 3D. It didn't make no sense then. It wouldn't have made no sense with this. And I don't think nobody would have forgave him for this, because nobody seemed to forgive the other guys for the 3D debacle. They basically steal the ending of Halloween H2O at one point in this. Michael Myers, you know, he crushes somebody's throat and he puts the mask on somebody, and things happen, you know, and it's okay, but we've done seen that before, and I don't really know why they wanted to go do that again, unless they were calling back to H2O. But then again, you kind of think maybe for this being Michael's big, you know, I'm back party, that they would have done a little bit more than just recoup something like we've already seen. The ending is probably the thing that baffles me the most. They leave it open for another one, but we go back to the Dr. Loomis thing, and when it's all said and done, spoiler alert if you ain't read the script or whatever, but Rogers is in the hospital. And next thing you know, we discover he's talking to Dr. Loomis at the side of the bed. Now, why Loomis, you know, gets you know, pretty well shut out the rest of the movie, but he comes back at the end. I can see what they're kind of going for. That's the big stinger. Oh, it's Loomis, blah, blah, blah. But what were they going to do? Were they going to do a CGI Loomis? Were they going to recast Loomis? No, so I don't know if they were going to CGI the guy. I don't know if they were going to try to find a lookalike or just keep him in the shadows. But again, if you're going to do another sequel, you can't have Loomis. So if you're going to take him out of the part, then why not just take him out of a hole? So I really hope that when, you know, McBride and them go and they do the new Halloween movie, that they kind of learn from the mistakes here, and if they're going to pick up after part 2, you know, at least I'm sure they're going to acknowledge Laurie Strode. They should. I guess they're going to say he's still her brother. I can assume that's what they're going to do. Maybe they ain't going to recast Loomis. Maybe they ain't going to CGI Loomis. I don't know. But maybe that'd be best off if we kind of pick up at modern times after all that happened, and you just say, well, Loomis passed away or something. I don't know. Because Loomis was supposed to blow it up at the end of part 2, so that is one way that they could have, you know, write him out of this. And maybe, you know, you continue with Jamie Lee Curtis. Maybe you find an actress that looks like her to continue the story. Or maybe you just, you know, use some CGI, because they like doing that these days. I don't know. In all seriousness, you know, I hope it turns out good, because Halloween's one of my favorite films. I like Friday the 13th better, and I did get that script. Maybe I'll give that a read and a review later on. But that's basically my long-winded and late review for the unproduced Halloween Returns script. And I did also see the Halloween 3D script. Maybe that'll be another video later on, because that one didn't work either.